All right, guys, what's going on? Welcome back to the Everything College Football podcast. Today, me and Nick here, we're doing our 2023 Week Zero analysis and prediction. We'll be going through each game, all 7 contests, offering analysis and leaving a prediction with our best bet for each contest. And kicking things off, it's going to be Dublin, Ireland, Notre Dame hosting Navy. This was a really solid game last year between Northwestern and Nebraska. I think this is really cool. They go out to Ireland, and they're going to continue to make this a tradition, it seems, Nick, in Week Zero. This year, the midshipmen, they're looking to try and avenge last season's close loss to Notre Dame. Obviously, the Navy offense really failed to refresh under Ken Niumatalolo. They're still going to operate out of the triple option, though obviously a lot of people weren't very happy with his firing. I personally wasn't a fan of it one bit. But they're going to look to add some new wrinkles in this offense. Not sure who's going to start at quarterback. Ty Lavatai, Xavier Arline are both seniors. I'd expect maybe those guys to get the nod, but Thomas Gleaton may be the man at quarterback. Whoever it is needs to be better at making decisions and more decisive. You know, the 241 rushing yards per game is a far cry from where they want to be. Obviously, for most programs, that's a phenomenal number. But when you operate it out of this triple option, Nick, that's not great one bit. Daba Fanfona was a consistent runner for the most part. He got stonewalled versus Army, though. But the numbers were overall quite sound for him. He was the third leading rusher. Anton Hall is also back. Connor McMahon is going to be the guy to follow. He was strong left guard, likely kicks out the left tackle this season. They're going to want to follow behind him. LaRon Barizzi is 6'3", 315. Everyone else is in that 280, 285-pound range, which is typically where they want to be here for these service academies, but overall physicality needs to step up. I think obviously controlling time of possession is going to be the goal here. You know, they're second in that category last year while being 87th in third down. They got to be better on third down, but if they can continue to do that and elevate in that area, Nick, the time of possession is going to be massive in their favor. This is a team that can churn out 10 or 11-minute drives, and, you know, they're 37% in this game a season ago. Clearing 45 or 50% would do wonders for Navy in this game. 3 for 11 last year. They lost by only 3 following a great second half. You know, what's your assessment here of Navy coming into this game? Because a lot of people don't think this one will be close. But like I said, 1 11-minute drive, and boom, this is a close ball game.
It's a very interesting matchup to kick off the week. This is probably the best game of the day we're going to get on Week Zero. I like this matchup a lot over in Ireland. It's the second time these two historic rivals play each other in Ireland. They played in 2012 at the same stadium, the Aviva Stadium in Dublin. Very nice, modern stadium, good for hosting football. Of course, Northwestern beat Nebraska in what was a really, a classic way to kick off the season. That was a great game. Georgia Tech, Florida State play there next year. Very exciting. I like what they do over there. I think Navy here is an interesting matchup, certainly against this Notre Dame team that's transitioning with a new quarterback and a new offensive coordinator. Navy, of course, they fired their longtime head coach, which I did not agree with. I think that was the wrong move. I think you weren't going to get much better than what they had done under a stabilizing head coach there. Now they move into this new era. They're going to continue to run the triple option. Like you said, time possession is going to be the key here. They want to continue to hold the ball and be able to use that to their advantage. They were solid last year in time possession. I mean, second in that category is fantastic. They have to continue to find a way to do that against this Notre Dame defense that has some question marks across the board. I think this Navy offense is not great, obviously, in the triple option, a bit outdated. Physicality they have here with the nice size up front and the good players they have for the triple option, plus the abuse of the time of possession is currently working in their favor. If they get a nice long drive going, they could put some points up and control the tempo and find Notre Dame in some trouble.
Riley Mills, Howard Cross, they're going to lead a Fighting Irish defensive line that was quite strong last year. They're not going to have Isaiah Foskey coming off the edge. But the Navy passing attack doesn't figure to do much here, especially against guys like Benjamin Morrison, Cam Hart at corner. They allowed 255 and 2 scores rushing last year in this game. They want to be much more physical. It's a veteran linebacking core looking to get the season start right, led by Jack Kaiser and JT Bertrand. So I think Notre Dame certainly is going to have an edge in this side of the football. I think the defensive line is going to step up and they're going to play well. But you never know. It's really hard to predict these games with the triple option offense because when they're starting to get 2 or 3 yards per down, that really sets them up to do well on third. And again, 3 of 11 last year. All they have to do is be a little bit better than they were on this side in this season's game. The Navy run defense, they were third nationally last season. That was no fluke one bit. They held these boys to only 66 yards on 34 touches. That's awful. Ostick, Estime, and crew, they're going to see the tape, and they're going to have a sour taste in their mouth, though, especially guys like Joe Wall, one of the nation's best tackles, Zeke Correll in the middle, Blake Fisher, still some great upside at right tackle, some great size and experience and talent. Fisher, he's a big specimen. Establishing the ground game is a must here. But bad news for the Irish is everyone is back basically for the shipment. Safety John Marshall is elite versus the run. He's gone. But the front seven largely remains intact. They get back Colin Ramos, Will Harbor at linebacker, Clay Cromwell, Jacob Busick on the defensive line. Where is the Notre Dame confidence level heading into this one, Nick? Because they got completely stonewalled running the ball last season. That caused them to almost blow this game where they scored 0 points in the second half when they got off to a big lead, putting up 35 on them in the first frame last season. So where is this confidence level at, you think?
worried with this run defense that Navy returns. This is a very strong unit, third in the nation, like you said, an incredible unit that just can stonewall teams when they need to. 66 yards on 34 touches is a really impressive number for this Navy defense. I think this year with a new quarterback under center, I think they'll feel a little bit better. I think Hartman just adds that potential to burst out there as a quarterback. I think they're going to go through the air a lot on Saturday. I think they're going to really go after. I think that's the best option for them when they play this game, is they have to go through the air. This Navy secondary, which is a good unit, there certainly are some talented pieces, but I'd say they're better against the run in the secondary they are against the pass, which I think is their one weakness here, that Notre Dame's going to try and exploit that, go through the air early and often and try and find a way to get through there, because I just think the running can have a struggle here. I think there are some talented pieces in this running back room for Notre Dame, but Navy's run defense is just too good right now. They return too much talent, and it's going to cause some issues for this Notre Dame offense.
Sam Hartman seemed to be a nifty scheme fit with Tommy Rees. Don't expect much to change here, even with his departure. But big pass plays came very easy for Drew Pine this past season against this defense, and Sam was a bit more pop on his throws. Jaden Thomas had a big game last year. Tobias Merriweather seems poised for a great year. And they had, of course, Tyree, moves over from running back to wide receiver. Should certainly spark some big plays, at least on screens and such, I would say. Sam Hartman, he played Army twice in his career at Wake Forest. And I said going into that first one, I was like, I'm hammering these guys in fantasy this week because these service academies don't, practice against these type of offenses. What do you know? They got absolutely hammered through the air. Same thing's going to be said for Navy. Obviously, the scheme's a little bit different than it is at Wake Forest, but the game plan's still going to be the same here. They're going to look to spread things out and get these guys moving vertically and downfield. And last year, the big passing plays, I believe Drew Pine only had a handful of completions, and he still was able to tear them apart. It really gave this opposing defense a headache. 17 completions, completed 81% of those for 269 and 4 scores. Those numbers are going to be drastically higher. There's going to be a lot of volume, I think, under Sam Hartman in this game. I think he's going to have a field day.
I think it's certainly possible that they put up a ton of yards and ton of points through the air. I really think that's going to be the key to unlocking this Navy defense, attacking them through the air often and quickly. I think this is going to be a good option for this Notre Dame pass. I think Sam Hartman's going to be in control in the pocket here, throwing through the gun. I think this is a fantastic opportunity for him to really show what he can do stepping into this new offense. This wide receiving unit for Notre Dame isn't the best on paper, but I think they match up pretty well against this Navy secondary. There's a lot of good advantages they can have here. They have nice speed. I think there is some serious talent that can get by this secondary piece. I think they're going to struggle to run the ball, so they're going to have to go after the pass. They find themselves in some good positions early on if they go for first-down passing attempts. And I like the way that they can use this offense through the air, a new scheme here with a new quarterback to kind of torch this Navy defense.
Now, I have the prediction as 45-20, and this is the biggest reason why. It's an interesting game because that elite run defense for Navy, along with an offense that eats up your own time, that might just be the formula here. And that's going to be the formula all season long. That's just a great way to do it. Notre Dame, they were 130th, dead last in red zone scoring percentage on defense. Can they hold them to 3 points? I think the run game will put up around 150 yards or so for Notre Dame. I think Navy's offense will keep this game close to a few long drives, but the short drives for the Irish due to big passing plays will be the difference maker. Those quick strikes will put this game out of range. They were up 35-13 in the first half last year. Nick outscored 19-0 in the second frame. Complete embarrassment for this football team last year. They almost blew it late in the year in this contest. The offense will be better established over 4 quarters. They won't allow them to get back into the game late. But if Navy's down about 20 points and they score on a long 10-minute drive, that could put a lot of pressure on this defense. It could really have them in peril, so they cannot allow that, or this could certainly end up in the exact same scenarios last year where it comes down to the wire. I don't think it will, Nick. I think the final analysis I just offered right here explains why this will be a high-scoring victory for Notre Dame. But week 1 of college football in another country, anything can happen. Looking forward to it.
I agree with you. I think it's going to be a blowout here. I like Notre Dame to win this game by a healthy margin. The spread right now is 19.5, 20, depending what book you get it at. I think you're going to hammer the spread here for Notre Dame. I think they just have too much potential with this new offense that they're looking at. Nice passing attack here. They have a solid offensive line that can certainly help try to balance against this run defense. I don't think they're going to have a great day on the ground. I think it's certainly going to get the points through the air. I also think this Notre Dame defense has enough talent to stonewall some of this offense. Yes, Navy can find a way to get some nice long drives, but I think they're going to struggle in the red zone early on in the season. They're only going to put up 10 points here. I think Notre Dame has a great opportunity here to step up and put up a nice showing week 0 on the road in a rivalry game, in a neutral site here in Ireland. I like to see Notre Dame dominate this rivalry game. They've dominated. They've won 5 in a row here, and I think they're going to get 6.
The over-under at 50.5 is also quite low. And, of course, the triple option offense leads to these totals in these games being lower. And I think that's certainly going to be something you can hammer as the over Because, again, I just think they're going to put up some quick strikes, and I don't expect them to lay their foot off the gas late, even if they are by a healthy margin. They just need a couple points to clear that final hurdle. I think they're going to do it because this is an offense that certainly wants to get accustomed to having Sam Hartman under center. They want to play, fast, furious, and they certainly want to get as many plays as they can as they head into a very tough schedule. Ohio State looming in about a month or so after this contest. So even if the game's late, Nick, and they just need to score a couple more points, I expect them to do that even if there's a few minutes left to go in this game and it's put away.
I agree. I think they're going to blitz through the air, and they're going to go after as much as they can. I expect them to put up at least 5. They could push 50 on their own. I think this Notre Dame offense is going to go out full guns blazing here and try to put as many points as possible to get themselves in a nice rhythm before they play some of the heavy hitters on their schedule.
Around the time that game will be concluding, Jacksonville, Alabama, Jacksonville State, the Gamecocks will be making their FBS debut on CBS Sports Network. A game that's certainly not going to get enough love, Nick. The thing about Week Zero is you have all these random wacky matchups, but as college football fans, we absolutely love stuff like this. Very interesting line, only -1 in favor of the Miners. The UTEP offense should certainly be better than what they produce. 24 points per game, 385 yards per contest. Gavin Hardison put up 3,200 yards in 2021. They lost Jacob Cowing. The passing offense took a complete dive, nearly 40 yards less per game. Yards per attempt was down a good bit as well. Completion rate's always been in the mid-50s for Hardison, which isn't great. Tyron Smith, he was originally headed to Texas A&M, decided to come back, provides elite speed versus what was a good secondary last season in the ASUN Conference. Free safety Jeremiah Harris coming back is good news. Some concern with junior CB's Marco Baker and Jamari Jemison. Safety group was really good for the Gamecocks last season. This 3-3-5, Colby Fukuna was really good. Great versatility, mainly a box player who didn't do well in coverage. They still have some studs in the back end. Do you think the Gamecock secondary is ready to make this step up here against what could be a very more than serviceable passing attack for UTEP? Hardison's a veteran, has been around forever. And again, Smith has elite speed, something they're not accustomed to seeing at the FCS level.
This exciting weekend for a Jacksonville State team that jumps up to the FBS level. I think the secondary unit is good. They keep Tyreen Smith, who is a huge return, very elite speed player, really good in the secondary last year. Jeremiah Harris as well is a good player to return. The safety group worries me a little bit, but I think there is enough talent on this team. I like the scheme playing the 3-3-5. I think it's fantastic here. Well against this UTEP offense, which was pretty good. They just should have put up a little bit more points last year. 24 points per game is a little bit of a lower end for this UTEP offense. I would have expected a little bit more out of them, but I think the secondary unit has the potential for Gamecocks to give them a little bit of some trouble for the Miners.
The UTEP offensive line under Dana Dimmel has always had some size. 4 or 5 starters, all over 305 pounds. JSU doesn't exactly have poor size on the D line, but this unit allowed 170 plus yards per game on the ground. Good opportunity seems ahead for Deion Hankins, who had 700 plus rushing yards last season, 38 attempts per game for this team. They certainly want to pound the rock. Edge Chris Hardy was a really good run defender last season. Jeff Marks, Jalen Swain, players that are happy. They're happy with those guys in run support, but it's a boost in competition at the end of the day. They held up well versus the only FBS opponent last season. They played in Tulsa against the run. I think it was like 160 yards they allowed. They still allowed 600 plus yards as a team, and they lost the game by a ton. I think they allowed 50 or 60 points to the Golden Hurricanes, and that one got absolutely blown out. So I think this is an advantage right here for UTEP. I think that's why I have this being such a large scoring margin, is they have a good edge, I think, on the ground. Could be completely wrong, but I think UTEP here, they're really going to pound the rock. They're going to have 45 attempts in this game. They're going to put up a lot of yards, at least 200 plus, and that's going to be why there's going to be such a wide margin in this contest at the end of the day.
I agree. I think there is a great opportunity with this offense here. I think they can put up a ton of points for this UTEP team. The physicality is certainly going to be there. I think Jacksonville State is going to struggle a little bit considering they're making the big jump here and they're a little undersized. Rich Rodriguez has done a good job with this Jacksonville State Gamecocks team. It's exciting to see them make the jump up to FBS level here. I think they're just going to be a little bit outclassed against the UTEP team.
Jacksonville State, they went 9-2 last season. A lot of people don't know. Rich Rodriguez is the head coach here. Spread option led by quarterback Logan Webb, 647 yards and 13 touchdowns. Anwar Lewis at running back had 818 and 8 scores. They had Malik Jackson from Louisiana Monroe. He really struggled with efficiency at 3.6 yards per attempt. They also picked up Nebraska transfer Logan Smothers at quarterback, who's got great speed. This run game averaged about 251 yards per game last season. UTEP allowed over 190 only once, and that was against Oklahoma, where they put up 250. Overall, only 5 games off 150 rushing yards per game allowed. The Miners get back elite defensive lineman praise on Onwoli and Keenan Stewart. Overall, veteran defensive line. They also have veteran star linebacker Tyrese Knight. This offensive line really isn't all that good for JSU. Everyone's about 290 or less. I think the Miners have a big edge in the trenches. They're going to control this Gamecocks running game, and their own will do some good work. And the pass game will spark a few big pass plays. Again, not really sure of this spread. I have UTEP beating Northwestern as well, so certainly we'll look to handle business here. rude awakening for JSU, I think, for their debut at the FBS level. Again, Nick, the information I just laid out to you, why are they only a 1-point favorite?
Certainly interesting that this is basically a pick 'em. I really don't understand what the books are looking at here. Of course, Jacksonville State makes the jump up to FBS with Rich Rodriguez at the helm, but this UTEP team has just so much talent on offense, and they're really a lot bigger than JSU in the trenches. They're absolutely going to dominate the trenches. I think the UTEP defensive line will absolutely dominate against this Jackson State offensive line. I expect the Gamecocks to score some points. We both have them scoring 20 points. Might be a bit generous, but I think they're going to get the opportunity to score, put some nice drives together. What is a decent offense that they have, returning nice pieces and transfer pieces. I just don't see why the spread is so close. A line, closer to 8-9 would have been appropriate for this game, and I still would have taken UTEP to cover that. I think this is going to be a bit of a lopsided game early. I expect Jacksonville State to score some points in garbage time and make it a little bit closer to scoring their first game at the FBS level.
We made our predictions separately, so 35-20 is just a very odd coincidence, but I think we'll probably be pretty on point there. Looking at UMass-New Mexico State, Don Brown's squad going to take primetime ESPN here against an Aggies team that really closed out the year very well last season. New Mexico State has lots of turnover and was a good defense for the Aggies, but there's nothing for the Minutemen to take advantage of with a unit that put up less than 13 points per game and only 266 yards per game. They added Kashan Pamachahan from Georgia Tech. He also spent some time at Clemson. Mark Pope comes over. Anthony Simpson from Arizona to kind of beef up this wide receiver group. But the offensive line is not good at all. The 148 rushing yards per game isn't an awful number, but they did that on 43 attempts per contest, and they lose their top two rushers. Don Brown's defense will be what we're watching, though. 12-point improvement, down from 43 points per game 2 seasons ago. Lose good a bit of production, though. They get back Bully Wooden at defensive tackle. Jordan Mahoney at defensive back was an elite run defender. I think UMass defense will keep him in this, but I think the offense is going to struggle way too much. New Mexico State, they were 16th in pass defense last year. And the Aggies offense also gets back their top 3 rushers, including quarterback Diego Pavia, who really came on late in the year versus the 114th ranked run defense here. I think UMass, they're going to be outmatched in this one. New Mexico State, I don't think they're going to put up an absurd amount of points. And I think the defense will perform very well for Don Brown in spurts. But I just think the ground game is going to be the key here. They really just need to protect the ball. Don't give an F-rated offense any hope at all. I think Star Thomas and Pavia, they're going to have a field day here on the Minutemen. 30-14 for me. You're picking a much closer game, though, which includes UMass covering.
I think it's going to be a closer game. I think UMass's defense has a lot of talent that's very underrated. For their level, of course, talent is all in a perspective there. But for their level, I think Don Brown has put together a decent defensive unit that really looked good in certain parts of the season last year that has an improvement here. I think this defense is going to keep this team in the game. I think a defensive touchdown is certainly potentially going to help them get that score a little bit closer. I like them to get a turnover or two against this New Mexico State offense. There are some nice pieces. I think Star Thomas is a fantastic running back to return. I just think this game's, it's kind of weird picking games like this. They're just a random matchup. I mean, UMass, New Mexico State's a very random matchup of independence, and I think UMass is just going to get a little bit lucky here and keep this game close. I just have a weird feeling about UMass this week. I think there is something you can see about them. Kind of an odd game to play in primetime on week 0. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, but it should be an interesting game if you want to watch some weird late-night college football.
At 7 p.m. Eastern Time, there will also be on FS1, Ohio in San Diego State, a much more competitive matchup, much more entertaining one. Very interesting game here. Curtis Rourke was flat out elite last year, 25 touchdowns, 4 picks, added another 304 scores on the ground. He's coming off a torn ACL, though. They're hoping he's fully healthy. Seiya Bagura really emerged as a redshirt freshman last year, 1,000-plus yards on the ground, 13 scores. Offensive line was really good at paving the way for them. They had back 4 starters up front. The lone departure is a big one, though. Hagen Mazravi. The pass blocking was a major issue for this O-line, though. San Diego State, though, they lose their top 4 sack getters from what was a really good pass rush. Garrett Fountain's expected to be the big producer for them up front. Great run defense for San Diego State. Some above average size for the Bobcats offensive line. They have to deal with, though, in Cedric Barfield, Dejon Malone. These guys lead a coverage unit when you look at the secondary. And Jacoby Jones, Miles Cross, they're productive pass catchers that are back for the Bobcats. The defense always figures to be a tough matchup. Lots of turnover in the front 7, though, for the Aztecs, and that's what's concerned for me. What do you think about this Ohio offense going against the Aztec defense? Because obviously, when they're on point, they're really good, but when they struggle, they lose football games. In San Diego State here, 3-point favorites coming off a loss to Middle Tennessee in their bowl game, a game I picked them to lose, and they certainly did. What's your assessment of those matchups?
There is some talent on this Ohio offense. Curtis Rourke, I'm a little questioning how he's going to come back from that torn ACL when he was fully healthy. Very talented quarterback that has some nice untapped potential for this Ohio offense. Elite, if you want to use the word, 25 4 interceptions. Celine Bergeron as well at running back. Very good running back. Nice slasher. Nice speed on him. Cuts through defenses. Very good. Emerged as a good player as a redshirt freshman. The offensive line has some serious talent, some nice size for this Ohio offense. I certainly think that San Diego State's going to have some struggles on offense. I think their defense matches up well in certain situations. I do like their pass rush. I know they've lost a lot of talent, but I still think they're going to find a way to be productive. Next man up sort of mentality on this front seven. I like the secondary a lot too. Some good players back there for San Diego State.
That's always been the case with them, as they lose guys and their pass rush ends up being just fine. You look at the offensive side of the ball for San Diego State, and they've just been a big liability as always. Jaden Maiden was a solid player at quarterback, really put the ball in harm's way, ended up with 10 interceptions, and I think he only got 6 starts. I think he had the last 6 starts of the year. That was what those picks came over. So 12 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, really had a problem turning over the football. Don't want to be playing from behind in this one. The wide receiver Mekhi Straw, tight end Mark Redmond, the only guys back, that much of any production last year. The backfield has a slew of different options. Jalen Armstead was the second leading rusher. Keenan Christian, a 185-pounder with great speed. Figures to be the starters. They need big plays. Didn't really see many touches last year, though. He did have a big screen he took to the house for 70 or 80 yards against Middle Tennessee. Final game of the year. The offensive line was one of the worst graded run blocking units in FBS, and that's their identity, Nick, is to run the football. And kind of like these other schools, like Wisconsin and whatnot, they're finally making changes. The offense is completely ancient, and San Diego State, that's the same thing here. This is an old school offense that's not good one bit because they're just trying to be too strong in the trenches, and they don't thrive there. And that was Stanford's biggest downfall that's led to them just being awful, really, at this moment in time, where they can't run the football, can't develop anybody up front, and that's why they're just obliterated as a football team. In the Bobcats, they're 50th nationally versus the run, allowed 4 games of 230-plus yards. They also had 7 games of 105 or less, so they showcased they could be dominant, led by defensive end Vonnie Watkins, who was really productive, better pass rusher than run stopper, but he was a great player nonetheless. I just think this is a bad matchup for San Diego State. As always, though, I don't think there's ever a good matchup for them with this offense, Nick. How do you think it's going to play out for them as in a game they'll be at home for?
I agree. There are some concerns for me on this offense. I do think this is going to come down to a battle of the defenses. Which defense has a better day? I think San Diego State's defense just has a little more talent for me and is going to be more adjusted for this game. But certainly the San Diego State offense leaves a little bit to desired. Straw is a good player to return, wide receiver, and Mark Redmond's a nice physical tight end who I like to see him return. Jaden Maiden, I think he's potentially improved during practice this offseason. Looked pretty poor at the end of last season. I have some faith in this team, though. I think this defense is going to bail them out of a lot of tough situations during this game at home. The crowd should certainly help them a little bit as well. I like this defense to be involved, get after the quarterback, and make life difficult for Rourke, who's coming off of a tough ACL injury and kind of getting back to the speed of play.
Keying in on the Bobcats defense a little more, Rodney Matthews is a good defensive tackle. Bryce Houston needs to be more consistent, but he was a productive player and is a great pass rusher at his linebacking spot. Key Thompson also returning. So they get 2 returning linebackers from a year ago. They're very well productive. Torrey Cox was an elite cornerback for Ohio. 126 in FBS and pass defense, though. That's obviously not great. Bobcats were awful against the pass, but at the same time, they don't figure to be pressed much in the pass game. Some turnover on the D-line is a little worrisome, but this is not a tough matchup by any means for this defense. Ohio to cover outright behind a modest, balanced attack and a strong defensive effort. And what I mean is Ohio will be effective enough on the ground, efficient enough through the air. Obviously, I don't think they're going to put up 500 yards by any means, but I think they'll stay ahead of the sticks for the most part. Rourke will have plenty of opportunities, I think, in this game as San Diego State. 123rd nationally on third down last year. Obviously, a big key in games like this. It seems every Aztec game is, can they force short fields with punts and, 3 and outs and turnovers? And I think that's one thing you're really keying in on yourself, Nick, is you're thinking their defense is going to be able to step up and create some turnovers and create those short fields, which is obviously going to be the biggest key to the game.
That's the key for the game for me. I think that's what's going to happen here on this game on a Saturday. I think they're going to be able to create short fields and find themselves in a good position to force punts, turnovers, things of that nature. Line a lot. I think they've added they have some nice pieces that return. I think the secondary unit's good. Some nice hard-hitting figures as well. I expect them to get some nice turnovers, potentially a defensive touchdown to help out keep this game a little bit closer. I like them at home here. I think it's going to be an interesting crowd. Should be a nice pro San Diego State crowd. Some good energy for the Aztecs. I like them to win this game. They're favorites by 3 points. I think it's going to be close. Certainly, I have them winning by 4. Going to be a tight one. I think Ohio could certainly steal this one, though. If I had to pick a game here that I'm the most uncomfortable about in terms of making a pick, it's certainly going to be this one. These are 2 pretty talented teams that are pretty balanced.
I think that'll probably be the best game on the slate, though. Moving to Hawaii versus Vanderbilt, 7:30 Eastern time on SEC Network, live from Nashville. Me and Nick had a pretty friendly wager on this one a year ago. He was back in Hawaii, and I said Vanderbilt's absolutely going to blow them out, and that's what they did. They won that game by 50-plus points. Hawaii, they returned Braden Schrager at quarterback. He had already 2,400 yards, 13 touchdowns, and 10 picks. They get back their top 2 pass catchers. Seven McGee comes over. So some vets, some sense of vets in the passing game for them. Tylen Hines was an impressive 170-pound freshman runner. 4 seniors up front might give them a shot versus the 96th ranked run defense. But I still don't think Hawaii will compete one bit. 117th in total defense, 126th versus the run. Getting back Jordan Welsh, Ezra Avamilo, he was a good run stopper for them. Added some transfers with some returning vets. But the size of the Vandy offensive line figures to shred them up. They had 400-plus yards rushing last year. They don't have Mike Wright at quarterback. And they have some youth in the backfield for the most part, but they're going to put up yards nonetheless. The Vandy defense is awful, but Hawaii doesn't have much talent to take advantage of it. I think the talented receiving core led by Will Shepard and Jade McGowan will also have a bigger day than expected. I think Vanderbilt's going to run away with this one. I went ahead and went with 45-17. I don't think the margin will be as wide as it was last year. This is going to be a no contest here, though. The only thing I'm really worried about was who can I pick in DraftKings this game, Nick, that's going to shine for me. Only worry there for me.
I'll put my hands up and say I made a mistake last year. I was confident that Hawaii would cover the spread. I believe it was plus 9.5, something like that. I thought I gave a lot of good reasons, what in my opinion, what I thought were good. A tough trip for Vanderbilt heading out west, new offense, things of that nature. I liked Hawaii there. I was wrong. I'll put my hands up a minute. You nailed it. You were totally on that one from the start. You said Hawaii was going to get blown out, and they didn't. I think I'm not going to make that mistake again this year. I think Vanderbilt's going to blow this team out. I think Will Shepard's a very talented player. Jade McGowan, a great wide receiver. I think Vandy's found themselves in a good position with his offense that can put up a lot of points. This Hawaii defense was terrible. 117 the total defense, 126 versus the run. I expect them to have a very bad day. I think it's going to be a blowout here. The spread's minus 18. Vandy should cover that very easily. I haven't put up 56 points. 56-7 is my score prediction. This game's at home. It's going to be a smaller stadium. Vanderbilt hasn't finished their renovations yet, about 28,000 fans. We'll see what the attendance looks like on a Saturday in week 0. I think Vanderbilt's going to dominate here and absolutely blow out this Hawaii team. I was high on them last year. That was a mistake. I'm not making that mistake 2 years in a row.
Yeah, I definitely think they can slow down the run game a good bit. They might have a shot because the pass defense really isn't all that bad. I think they performed pretty well last year. Even when they did perform well, they still got blown out in games. And they did play Jake Haener last year and he absolutely throttled them. So the secondary certainly did have some issues. And they also gave up 322 yards through the air to San Diego State, that team we just dogged on for how bad of a passing attack they have. So even though in spurts they were solid, I don't think they can compete here with a very good Vanderbilt receiving core. Looking at an interesting game here, San Jose State and USC. Obviously, you look at the billboard here. The Trojans have an edge everywhere. Obviously this is not probably going to be a close game one bit, but there's plenty to look forward to. The Spartans come in as 30-point dogs. They have a really good quarterback though in Chevin Cordero, running back here Robinson, Justin Lockhart, Charles Ross, only notable production back, a wide receiver. Below average unit, faces a completely revamped USC defensive line. SDS State competed with Auburn last year. They never got blown out in a game. The QB they have can make this game close. I've always been a big fan of Cordero. He was a former Hawaii product. And they can put up some numbers in this game if this defense plays how they did last year. Spartans, they had a pretty stout defense last year, but they lose guys like Kyle Harmon, Valami Fihoko, and others to par. The second leading tackler, Brian Parham, is back at linebacker, Michael Dansby at corner, and safety Trey Jenkins are, some of the other best players to return on this defense. But they have to contain this elite offense. It's going to be an incredibly tall task. This was a good football team last season. The 30-point line, though, shows how much respect this UST team is getting, Nick. They should win with ease, but it'll be a formidable week 0 test for this defense. Obviously, added a lot of new faces, guys like Bear Alexander, Jack Sullivan, Mason Cobb at linebacker. You want to see how it comes together. Again, I think this is a formidable test. Caleb Williams in this receiving core, they're going to have no issues one bit. They're going to spread things out. They're going to put up a lot of numbers here in this one. Again, though, Nick, this is a good football team they're facing. 30-point line. Do you think it's justified?
I think it is justified. This is a good San Jose State team. No disrespect to this team. There is some talent. I think Cordero is a good quarterback for the level. Robinson's not a bad running back as well. There are some solid pieces in this defense. I think just USC has way too much talent here to be messing around in this game. They're going to put up a ton of points. This USC team comes back hungry. They're disappointed of how the season ended last year, losing the Pac-12 title game, then losing to Tulane in the Cotton Bowl. They want to come back and they want to win the Pac-12 and go to the college football playoff. I think they have all the talent in the world to do so. They address the issues on defense. They bring in a guy like Bear Alexander. They return Kalen Bullock. I think this defense will be good. They're going to come out here and look to set the standard quickly. Get some turnovers early, force this San Jose State team to some tough situations, and find a way to make this defense a staple here. This offense, we know what we're going to get out of this USC offense. They're going to put up a ton of points. They're going to blitz you through the air. I think they're going to find no problems with that. All eyes are going to be on the defense here, week 0. Can this defense live up to the expectations we have? What will Bear Alexander look like on that interior? And how will the secondary fare as they were a pretty decent unit at times last year, found themselves in some trouble, though. This is a good San Jose State team for their level. They're going to be very much outclassed against USC, but this is a lot of storylines for USC. A lot of people want to pay attention to see if this USC team is legit. This is not a bad team to play week 1 to get a good feel about how this team is going to look.
Yeah, they're 43 50% last year on third down on defense, which is awful. So if they come out guns a-blazing on third down in this game, I think they could probably hit 70 points. I think they might cover the over by themselves. I'll certainly take them to cover and that total, even though 64.5, very close. I could totally see them winning, 52-10 or something like that and barely missing out on it. But I think we're both going to go ahead and take the over and covering the spread here with the Trojans. Should be a fun time to watch that one. Looking at the final game on the Week 0 slate, 9 p.m. Eastern time from Ruston, Louisiana, FIU in a matchup against LA Tech. Grayson James somewhat emerged at quarterback for the Panthers last year, 59%, a little under 2,000 yards, even TD-INT ratio of 11. Shamari Lawrence arrives from South Dakota, only like 100 attempts for his career to boost a run game. They only put up 105 yards per game last year. That was 119th in FBS. Their top 2 pass catchers transferred to SEC West schools, Chris Mitchell, Jalen Bracey, and Dean Patterson. They were the next 3 leading pass catchers, so they're not fully scraped here by any means. LA Tech, 21st in FBS and opponent completion rating. Secondary is quite solid. They returned Willie Roberts, Cecil Singleton at safety and cornerback. They added 7 transfers in the secondary, so there's plenty of new faces trying to gel together while they only had 16 sacks from a season ago. Likely to have some issues against the pass here, Nick. I think these are some interesting things I'm keying in on. And obviously your score says completely otherwise, but I definitely think those factors for this defense might lead to them giving up some yards and some points in the back end.
I am not high on this FIU team. I think they've just lost too much talent. They lost a lot of talent on offense, and the defense was so poor last year, 120th in total defense and 111th against the run. Very bad against the pass as well. I think they're going to find a way to get this Louisiana Tech team. I think they have some nice talented pieces at running back and quarterback. I think the wide receiving room's a little bit weaker than I would like to see, but I think Louisiana Tech at home is going to be in a good spot here. I think they have a good offense against what is going to be a weak FIU defense that did not improve like they needed to in the offseason.
Yeah, the FIU defense was flat out awful. LA Tech, they get back efficient runners, Marquise Crosby and Jarvis Thornton, but the team only put up 125 yards per game last year on the ground. Passing game features some heavy volume. Hank Bachmer fell out of favor in Boise, but still a good, poised, tough quarterback who was good in 2021. Smoke Harris, more of a possession pass catcher, but him and Cyrus Allen, who had 22 yards per catch last season, provide plenty of explosions. Defensive end Jordan Bird versus left tackle Dakota White, who was awful last year, is going to be a very favorable matchup, I think, for FIU. They would like to expose that, no doubt. LA Tech offensive line, they're not much better. The secondary figures a struggle, I think, for FIU, though. Slot corner Jamal Potts hoping to set the tone. I think FIU keeps this one close, though, if it's passing game. Tech will have adequate balance, though, to win a tight one. But I definitely think some of those factors I said with the lack of pass rush and all these new faces in the secondary is going to allow them to be able to spark some plays. 28-24 for me. I think this will be a closer game. But again, you're going with a complete blowout here. Hopefully, for the sake of just being a college football fan, we hope that it is a close game. But this is going to be an interesting one, Nick. I'll definitely like to look at this one at the end of the night and see how it turned out.
I certainly don't want to see a blow up. I just think this LA Tech team just has too much talent compared to the FIU team. That they just lost too much talent this past season on offense for FIU to even find a way to make this work. I think the defense will get torched in the secondary and on the ground as well. I think Marquise Crosby is a really good back who has some nice speed and good cutting ability. The line's at 10.5. I think Louisiana Tech should cover that with ease. It's an interesting line at 10.5. I think it's a very odd placement there from the books. You're verging on getting close to blowout territory, but you're also in that 2-score game range. So it certainly they could cover that, and FIU makes this a little bit closer. I just think there's too much talent for Louisiana Tech at home here against this FIU team that I think is going to be struggling this year as they kind of transition with new faces on offense and defense.
Yeah, I certainly think the under is a good bet as well, though. That's it for today's episode. As always, Nick, I appreciate you joining me. This was great to finally get back in the lab and start breaking down these games. 2023 football season is about to kick off. We're finally here. Couldn't be more excited.
I'm super excited. I'm so glad college football is back. It seems like we count down all summer for this to come on. I love baseball so much, but I'm so excited that college football is back. I think it's a great rivalry game to kick it off with Navy and Notre Dame in Dublin. Exciting to see the game growing, internationally and bringing the game to new fans. Super excited for this Week Zero lineup. There aren't a whole lot of heavy hitters here, but there are some teams with question marks. Get to see some good teams in Notre Dame and USC play early. Get to see some other teams. We have a lot of questions like Vandy, Ohio, San Diego State, Louisiana Tech, all play early in the year. Very excited for this matchup. It's going to be exciting, fun to watch.
Plenty of money to be made as well at the sports books. Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.